All right, Chris Peaks back again with Brandon Moseley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we got an iconic figure here in Alabama politics, the legendary Ron Sparks. Ron, how's it going, man?
It's going great, guys. Good morning to you.
So,
Good
Ron, it's been
morning.
16 years since you were the Democratic nominee. In my opinion, the last credible nominee that had a viable chance of winning. What made you decide to get back into politics?
Well, I can tell you it was long and hard, and it was really a hard decision, being that you work all your life to get to a certain point to where you may be able to retire and do the things you want to do. But I had so much encouragement. People asking me, they've asked me to get in two or three different races, and I've always refused. But looking at what's happened at the Department of Agriculture, some of the things that I think have been done that I really don't agree with, that's what really made me make a decision to go back and give it another shot and see if you can't get things back to where you think the people of Alabama deserve it.
Former commissioner, when you were the ag commissioner from 2003 to January 2011,
That's correct.
it was a lot bigger department than it is now. I mean, not
Yeah.
throwing stones at your predecessors, but when the Republicans came in there in 2012, they did some significant budget cuts. Remember the old Farmers Bulletin we used to get every month? Back at one point, at the end, the Gazette was publishing it. Um, how different is it going to be to go to it? I mean, Garrett has
Well,
been sold off to Montgomery, and the
well,
farmers are about to move up to Jefferson County. How different is it going to be in a smaller, streamlined?
well. You're exactly right. It's pretty obvious. You know exactly what's happened at the Department of Agriculture. One thing, they've done away with the law enforcement division. I had a law enforcement division there that did a lot of work helping farmers and consumers across Alabama. Let me give you an example. They went to cattle sales, they went to sale barns, they worked with law enforcement. They knew the agricultural lane, and we were able to recover millions of dollars of equipment and cattle that were being stolen across Alabama. Well, that's no longer there. They have one guy, I think, at Aaliyah now, and I hired him, that is dedicated to that. I think that's ridiculous. The farmers of Alabama deserve better than that. And it's my goal to try to put that back. Also, too, they really stopped inspecting gas pumps the way we inspected gas pumps. They have even done away with the gasoline lab, which you, for an example, if you went to a service station and you bought 93 octane, I want to make sure you get 93 octane because you're paying more money. They don't even have a lab now to check that. They let the owner hire the inspector, and then the inspector turns it over to the Department of Agriculture. Personally, I think that's the fox guarding the hen house, and that's just not something I agree with.
Commissioner, you're respected. I mean, both Democrat and Republicans as well. You're by far the most qualified candidate in this race after serving one term or serving under Commissioner Bishop and two terms yourself. How do you convince voters to vote for the person instead of the party?
Well, you're right. A lot of people get hung up on voting straight tickets, and they get hung up on the R&D, which I think is very unfortunate. Uh, I would just ask the people that know me to look at the job that we did, the decisions that we made, and how hard we worked. I've always said that I never made a decision at the Department of Agriculture based on my party affiliation. I won my first election 49 years ago. So I've been doing this a long time, and I have a record, and anybody can examine my record and examine the decisions I've made. Even when I was a county commissioner in DeKalb County, the things that I tried to do to help my county, I always did it based on what I thought was right. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. And I'm not naive enough to realize that this is not going to be a competitive, hard race based on where we are today. but I think I've got it in me. I think I have the message, and I think the people of Alabama deserve to know what's happened to that department and the position that we have of trying to put it back together.
Commissioner, when I was, trying to come up with money for college, I was able to take a couple years off after high school and grow squash. Um, and I've tried other things, but squash was my main seller. And I could go to small grocery stores and they would bid on the squash out there
Absolutely.
behind the grocery, store. That's really sounds quaint. Now it's a whole lot more, the grocery business, for one, has changed where people buy their groceries from Publix, Target, and Walmart, or Kroger delivers it to their house, and the small grocery stores don't exist. So a lot of those small farmers that, professionally do what I used to do back in the 80s, they don't exist anymore. That means more of our produce is grown, in Mexico or Florida or Chile or, New Zealand or wherever.
Absolutely.
Um, is there a way to try to help the farmer in Alabama connect with the consumer in
Ab-
Alabama?
Absolutely. And if you remember, and that's a great question. I appreciate you asking that question. If you remember, I probably built more farmers markets across Alabama than any commissioner in the history of this state. We started what you call plasticulture, to where you can grow more squash on a smaller acreage and get more yield. We pushed grocery stores to buy local. We started country of origin labeling. You're exactly right. I've always said that I believe that people deserve to know where their food comes from. I don't care if you buy it, where you buy it, or where you want to buy it from. But as a consumer, you should know that. So absolutely, that was a very high priority of mine. In the Black Belt, what we did with the farmers in the Black Belt and across Alabama, and we're going to do that again. Those farmers know how hard I work to put those farmers markets out there to give those people a market. We also, the thing with big box grocery stores is that you've got to be able to promise them to deliver the quantity and the size on certain dates. And sometimes that was a challenge to a smaller farmer. But you can rest assured that we're going to do everything we can, because the smaller farmer really has a place in my heart, and I'm going to do all I can to help them.
Commissioner, talking about those small farmers, I think it was Senator Williams a while back, and I had him on. He was saying the one thing that was driving a lot of farmers out was the cost of health insurance for their families. Is there a way to get something
Well,
subsidized
well,
for them?
I don't know about that. When it comes to health insurance, I don't know if there's a way to get anything like that subsidized. I know the legislature passed a law last year allowing Alpha to put an insurance program together for farmers. But the main reason you're losing farmers today is profitability. That's always been an issue of input, what input cost. And if you remember, a lot of folks don't remember that, I understand what poultry farmers go through sometimes with the integrators, pushing them to do things. Maybe at the time they don't have the funding to do the things they need to do, and it puts a strain on them. I flew to Chicago and talked to integrators about how things was going with our poultry farmers. I flew to St. Louis and talked to Monsanto about the price of seeds and how they were treating Alabama versus how they were treating Mississippi. We got to do everything that we can, especially now. There's a lot of farmers on the brink of hardship and going out of business because of where we are today, cost of input, things that are going on. But you can rest assured, I had a great relate. Let me just say this. I had a great relationship with all the other commissioners across the United States. And by having that relationship, I don't know if you remember, they elected me president of the National
Yeah.
Association of Departments of Agriculture. And you know, I would like to be able to do that again, because that give me a voice with Congress, the ag committees, of trying to do everything that we could to help our farmers. And you can rest assured that I will spend every minute of my day trying to do just that.
Approximately 90% of the catfish grown in the U.S. is in Alabama and Mississippi. But in the last 25 or 30 years, they face enormous competition from Vietnam and China, where they grow sway, in those old flooded rice paddies, they let the rice sit fallow for a year and they grow sway in there. And then they market that as catfish and import it back into here. Is is there a way for us as a country, I don't know this could be done at the state level, to keep Vietnam and China from dumping sway in the American fish market?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. You're impressing me with the knowledge that you have about the Department of Agriculture. If you remember, I went to Vietnam. I know how they grow their catfish in Vietnam. I know the chemicals they put in their catfish in Vietnam. They raise it in the Mekong River, probably the most nasty river they are in the country, in the world. They raise it in ponds that they have to use chemicals and antibiotics to even keep their fish alive. You know what I did? I banned it. I banned it from coming to Alabama. But you can go to the grocery store now. You can see the Asian seafood. You can see Asian catfish. They even marketed it with the same labels that we have in Alabama. But I think if you go talk to any catfish farmer in the state of Alabama, we saved them on a number of situations, whether it was getting grant money from Washington to help them with the erosion of their ponds or whatever it may be. But I can assure you, we did probably more than any state, not only by me banning it coming into Alabama. I was able to work with Commissioner Odom of Louisiana. He banned it coming into Louisiana. Then I worked with Tommy Irvin, the commissioner of Georgia. He banned it from coming into Georgia. And boy, can you imagine how hard it was with some of those distributors up and down the East Coast, knowing we were banning that seafood coming into Alabama and some of the southern states. It was a difficult thing to do. But we had mechanisms at the Department of Agriculture that could check those levels of antibiotics that they were putting into their fish. And that would give us the opportunity to ban it based on those findings that we found in our labs. And we're going to continue to do that. It's sort of like I mentioned a minute ago. The labs at the Department of Agriculture are some of the most important departments. That's why I built 3 brand new state-of-the-art animal diagnostic labs, aquatic not diagnostic labs. I built a brand new one in Auburn. I built a brand new one in Boaz and a brand new one in Elba, Alabama. That was important to our ag industry for the very reason that you just talked about, to make sure that we know what's in those products. And if the wrong thing's in there, I'll stop it.
Commissioner, I think last summer, remember, I had Christina McKinnis on, and she was talking about one of the biggest threats was China buying up our farmland here. How can we stop that? Because we can't feed ourselves. We're in a mess.
I think we work with our legislature, and I think we pass a law that says that's just not going to happen. Not only China, guys, not only China. We're losing farmland in her area, for an example. We're losing farmland to urban sprawl. I mean, we're building subdivisions. We need some type of a rule and some type of program to where let me go back to this. Not only are we losing farmland, I'm only commissioner in the last 15 years that had a Farm Preservation Act. We saved farmland. I went to Washington and got grant money. I worked with the legislature and we were able to save farmland in Alabama. That needs to be high on our radar. We need to look at a real significant program to try to put something back in place to save our farmland in Alabama. She's exactly right.
Um, Commissioner, back on the fish thing.
Yes, sir.
Um, we've had an issue here lately with Mexican fishermen who probably are with the drug cartels coming over into our waters, probably to drop their drugs off in theory. And then while they're there, because they're fishermen, they catch our red snapper and then they go back to Mexico and it's imported from Mexico as
Back into
Mexican red snapper when it was really Alabama and Louisiana red snapper that they illegally crossed into our waters and fished and then sold back to us. And, our guys are getting limited on, how much fish they can harvest, how much our recreational guys can deal. And there's a portion of their fish getting fished by the Mexican fishermen. Is there anything? I mean, Tommy Tuberville's discussed this. Is there anything we really can do about that?
I think so. I think if you notice, I spent 4 years in the United States Coast Guard, and I think we need to possibly work with them for them to understand what's going on, and let's try to stop that. Our fishermen have a hard enough time with the regulations that they have now to get enough red snapper to market and to recreational fish as it is. I'll be damned if I'm going to sit back and let somebody come into our water and continue to catch our fish and send it back to us and sell it to us. That's just not going to happen. Anybody that knows Ron Sparks, they know that I won't put up with much of that and that I will go to whatever mechanisms I need to go to, work with whoever I need to work with, whether it be uh, President Trump or whoever the president is, whoever's in Congress. I'm willing to sit down and work with them and say, hey, this is a problem. Not only that, let me explain this. You can grow a cow in Australia and send it to the United States and have it processed. And when you go to the grocery store, it's marketed USA beef. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my life. And, uh, they were able to pass a law in Washington for whatever the reason. Uh, but those kind of things are ridiculous. Our farmers need to be able to live under the same regulations that anybody else. They need an even playing field. And I can assure you that if you look at the 8 years that I was commissioner, I did everything I could to make sure that our farmers had an even playing field. That's how they survive, is when you tilt that playing field away from them and don't give them the opportunity and they have to compete against the things that you've mentioned, that's where the hard times come in. So we got to give them an even playing field. You're 100% right. We shouldn't tolerate it, and I will work with the people that's necessary to try to make sure it don't happen.
Commissioner, talking about the beef, there's a grocery store I go to, and the other day they had ribeyes on sale for 15.99 a pound. And it's like, there's a huge drop. What causes that fluctuation in beef to go 25 pounds one week to 15 the next?
Well, I'd say it'd be your distributor. I'd say, that's been the biggest problem we've had with beef is the packers and stockyards in the Midwest. That's been the biggest problem we've had. And when I worked with Senator Jones, that was an issue that we tried to stop, and we started investigating to try to find out exactly what they were doing. What you're seeing now is a lot of, and I agree with this, is that you're seeing a lot of smaller mom and pop processing popping up around Alabama and different places. And I think that's good for Alabama, and I think it's good. I think it's good for our farmers, and I will continue to do everything I can to help our farmers and local processing so that people can eat products raised right here in Alabama and processed in Alabama.
Along those same lines, we raise a lot of chickens here in Alabama. And of course, we raise a bunch of catfish. And,
Oh,
there's a lot of mama cows here, but most of the finishing is out west because Alabama doesn't grow enough grain. We have a major grain deficit. We don't we
Yeah.
we have to import the grain from the Midwest, or for the chickens we have now is, and of course, in commodity prices at the moment due to the trade war, are ridiculously low. So asking our farmers to increase the acreage they plant is out of the question.
Mhm.
Is there a long-term plan for us to get more of that grain production that we had back in the 80s in Alabama so that maybe we
Well,
can
you
do
would.
things like finish our cattle here?
Well, you would certainly hope so. Most of our grain, you're exactly right. A lot of our grain goes into chicken feed in Alabama because we have such a large poultry operation in our state. But so far we've been able with these local mom and pops to be able to get the grain that they need to finish out. Certainly, a lot of our cattle leave the state of Alabama. They do go to the big processing plants to feed out, finish out, and that's just the way it is. But absolutely, we should do everything that we can to create that market back in Alabama, support these local farmers, support these local processors to try to get more of those mom and pops around the state of Alabama so that they can be more successful. You're right. There's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with at the Department of Agriculture, and you're right on spot with a number of those issues. And that's why I tell folks that the day I walk back into the Department of Agriculture, there's not any on the way training there. I know what every department does. I know most all the issues. Probably a lot of folks there that's there now that wasn't when I was the commissioner, but I do know there's quite a few folks there that I hired. So we're going to be able to hit the ground running and get on top of these issues day one. It's not going to be a learning curve for me. It's going to be day one. We're going to work. We're going to start working for the farmers. We're going to start protecting the consumers. And we're going to start using the Department of Agriculture that it was meant to be used for back when they created the Department of Agriculture. And that's just not what's happening today. They can't be proud of what some of the things that they're doing at the Department of Agriculture. They can't be proud that a farmer does not have a mechanism that if they lose cattle or equipment, who do they call? They can't be proud that when you go buy a gallon of gas, you don't know if you're getting a gallon or not. They can't be proud of that. That's the responsibility of the Department of Agriculture, and we need to stay on top of those things. And we need to make sure that we do everything that we can to help a farmer become profitable. Whether it's increasing grain production, whether it's building more processors, or whatever we've got to do, let's do it.
Chris, remember the first time I had you on the podcast like 5 years ago? I had no idea all the things that the ag commissioner did that they was, just as important, almost what the governor does. Can you tell some of the people some of the top things that you think that the commissioner?
Absolutely. A lot of people don't realize the Department of Ag is the second largest constitutional office in the state, other than the governor. We basically do with animal health what the governor does with human health. We have our diagnostic labs across the state of Alabama. We have our seed labs across the state of Alabama, making sure that if you're buying seed, that it's seed, that it's not obnoxious weeds or something like that. We have our food labs. We have our pesticide labs. People who come out and spray and do pesticides, we have those regulations. We have our weights and measures division that anything that's weighed and measured in Alabama, it's our responsibility to make sure it's correct. They also go out and make sure that the scales that farmers use or anybody else use, that they weigh correctly. Uh, Food safety. So it is a big department. It's a very important department. And as I mentioned a minute ago, I know every corner in that building. I know what needs to be done. I'm coming out of retirement to go back. I feel like I've got 4 more years in me to try to get things moving back in the right direction. I'm willing to work with the legislature and the governor, whomever it may be, to try to make sure these things happen. And it's a big department and has a lot of big responsibility.
One area that has changed, or gotten a lot worse over the last 15 years has been the wild hog situation. We've always had wild hogs in Alabama, but their population has gotten so large that there are counties in Alabama where you dare not plant a soybean because they'll dig all those little soybean seeds up, the day after they're planted. Is there something the Department of Agriculture could do with the USDA to,
Absolutely.
try to nip the wild hog menace, as crazy as that sounds, in the bud?
Well, I've always said you'll never eradicate them. You might be able to control them somewhat. Most people don't understand that a wild hog has 3 litters a year. And by the time that hog has the third litter, the first litter is having a litter. So you can imagine how fast they can populate. And absolutely, you're absolutely correct. We did an eradication program when I was there. That's an ongoing problem. It cost his farmers millions of dollars a year just to try to fix their fields. A lot of times, after the hogs come in there, and once they come in there, the only thing you can start doing is you start trapping as fast as you can, and you start killing as fast as you can to try to control it. You'll never eradicate it, but you can control it. And absolutely, the department should play a big role in that. Congress should play a role in that because it's certainly affecting our farmers in Alabama. We'll go back and revisit the program that we had, and we worked with USDA then, but it is an ongoing problem, and it's something that we got to continue to work on every day.
Commissioner, it's kind of a hypothetical, I guess. I know a couple years ago they passed like medical marijuana. Have you given any thought about if they started growing that here, how that would affect the Department of Agriculture, or what kind of regulations would be on it?
Well, first of all, I've been a part of that. I've probably gone to every meeting, every court case, I've been a part of that. So I pretty well understand the medical marijuana issue, probably as well as anybody running for this office. First of all, I would have never give away the responsibility that the law had for the Department of Agriculture to put rules and regulations in. The department went to the legislature and told them they didn't want to have nothing to do with it. Well, to be honest with you, that's the place it should have something to do with it, because
Yeah.
you have the inspectors, you have the labs, you have the things that are necessary to make sure that Alabama's doing it the right way. So I certainly would, rather than creating another bureaucracy or creating another agency that is spending millions of dollars. I'll give you an example. I probably shouldn't go here, but I will. The new agency that they've built, they've spent about $14 million, and they haven't advanced it 2 feet. And that's really sad because of PTSD of the veterans, the Parkinson's disease. Uh, those are things that are needed in Alabama. This could be a very valuable tool. And it's took 5 years from the time they passed that law until today to even try to get any traction. So absolutely, the Department of Agriculture should be a part of that program. They should have never give away the responsibility that they had. And when I go back into the office, we're going to see about revisiting that and getting that responsibility back over in the department where it should be.
Commissioner, you touched on this a little bit earlier with the integrators. Obviously Alabama raises a massive amount of chickens. Um, they put pressure on, we all remember the old days when, it was a diversified farm. It had like two chicken houses, and the guy did hay and he had cows and he grew some kind of crops. But the integrators put more and more pressure on, those farmers to get bigger or get out. So, a
Yes.
chicken house today is a lot bigger typically than the chicken houses we were building 40, 50 years ago. Um, and we put in cool cells and all that. And as you got bigger and you added more houses and more stuff, a lot of those farm families have had to rely more and more on immigrant labor. And now with the crackdown on illegal immigration, I think everybody understands that things got a little bit crazy down there on the border. What kind of pressure are the farmers under to come up with the labor to keep producing what we produce without the availability of labor that we've had for the last 20 years, legally or illegally?
Well, to be honest with you, they're under a lot of pressure, whether it be poultry farmers, whether it be vegetable farmers, or whatever farm you have that has high intensity labor. They're under a lot of pressure. And anybody that knows and watched when I was commissioner of agriculture, that was my position. You know, I'm not going to sit here and play games and tell you that I want to support anybody that is a criminal in this country, abusing or killing or raping. I don't support that. And I really don't know anybody that does. But we need to have some common sense when it comes to agricultural labor. We've got federal programs that you can get labor, but you can't get enough because the mechanism gets such a logjam that you can't get what you need to get done at your farm. So you're exactly right. We've got to work with Congress and we've got to work with folks to try to figure out that problem. If we don't, it goes back to how long can a farmer make it? You're exactly right. Nowadays they have what you call mega houses. Can you imagine what it costs a farmer today to go into a poultry business? Not only when they go into that poultry business, they marry that business. They pretty well do away with any kind of vacation they're ever going to have. They work at it 7 days a week. They're concerned about how hard, what kind of a winter they're going to have, how much of a propane bill they're going to have. Not only this, as long as that chicken is alive, the company owns it. When it's dead, the farmer owns it. And so they have so many things that are staring them in the face that can turn them upside down in a short period. I've heard every problem that a farmer has when it comes to the poultry industry. But at the same time, let me say this. You can't have a poultry industry without an integrated industry. This is
Yeah.
a situation to where you've got to work together and you've got to have some common sense to try to work together. And a lot of people don't understand that that poultry farmer knows at the beginning of the year how many flocks of chickens that he's going to have at the end of the year for him to be successful. And if anything in the middle of that interrupts that farmer, then he could end up on the losing end of the stick. And that's why we always work so hard. I'll give you an example. When Russia sort of cut us off, uh, when I was the commissioner, they were playing games and cut us off on imports of our poultry products, the dark product. We didn't really have. I went to Cuba. I opened that market, and they bought a lot of poultry in Cuba. And not only that, I went around the world pushing Alabama agriculture. But you're exactly right. That's an issue that we've got to continue to work with our farmers. They invest a lot of money. Every uh, they deserve everything that we can do to help them be successful, and certainly work with the integrators to understand that we need them also. So I've been right in that lane, and I understand, and I've talked to hundreds of poultry farmers that have the issues, and I understand what they go through sometimes.
The campaign, if assuming Senator Jones is the nominee, this will be the strongest Democratic ticket in really since she was the nominee. And I know Senator Jones has raised some money. Do you think that the other candidates down the ballot will get the money to be able to compete in the general election?
It's always the hard part, to be honest with you. That's the part I hate. You just want to know the truth about it. When I ran for governor, I despised it, sitting in that call room 7, 8 hours a day. That's the challenge, because a lot of times there's a lot of factors in whether you can raise money or you can't. If a lot of times if they don't think you could win, they're not going to support you, and that's a challenge. But hopefully they can. Hopefully they can get enough to be legitimate and have good competitive races. I think good competitive races are good for the state of Alabama. I don't think the people of Alabama understand what a supermajority in the legislature is. I wish the people of Alabama really understood what a supermajority is. A supermajority means that in some cases there's no debate. I've never seen an issue in Alabama that debate wasn't good. That something good come out of the a piece of legislation when both sides have an opportunity to argue it to the end. But today, when they get tired of hearing you, they just cloture you, run over you, and go do what they want to. And I don't think that's good for the Republicans. I don't think it's good for Democrats. I think there should be debate, and I think there should be common ground, and I think there should be working together in the legislature to make sure that the Alabama citizens get the best piece of legislation they can.
Commissioner, especially here in Montgomery County, we've had the proliferation of these solar farms where good cattle land or cropland has been taken out of production to put in, hundreds and in some cases thousands of acres of solar panels to produce electricity. Um, you can't run cattle under the solar panels because cows, they'll get to rubbing and scratching themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll do thousands of dollars worth of damage to the fancy panels. Um, I'm told you can raise sheep underneath them, but Alabama hasn't had a significant sheep industry since really the 30s. Um, is there a way for the Department of Agriculture to help some of these cattlemen transition to being shepherds so that we can utilize the grass is growing up underneath all these solar panels, which are popping up all over the place?
Well, I don't know that. Certainly, to encourage any farmer to go into any market, there's got to be a market for them to be able to sell their product. So I really don't know, to be perfectly honest with you, what the sheep market is. I know that you did have a few sheep farmers across Alabama that was able to do pretty good with their operations because they had a market, a local market. Atlanta, a lot of market would come out of Atlanta and bigger cities because there was a need for those sheep. Again, I think that we should be able to look at what technologies out there today, what the markets are, what we can do uh, to make sure that if there is some land that goes under solar, what can we do? What is any other project that we can do to try to help that farmer at that time? Usually, when a solar farm takes on that farmer's land, he's made a pretty significant deal at the front end of that, and so he's doing okay. But you're exactly right. We need to continue to look at innovation and what's available to continue to save our farmland as much as we possibly can.
Commissioner, I've got a picture of me when I was in high school and I was holding up a Clinton Gore sign on the election in '92. It seems like since that time, both parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have, started going to the extremes. What does being a Democrat mean to you today?
Well, they've labeled me from everything from being woke. I don't know what woke means. To be
I
honest, to
still
be
don't either.
honest
Don't
with
worry.
yeah, to be honest with you, it really nauseates me to see how politicians conduct themselves today, going to the extremes. I remember the days of Senator Sparkman. I remember the days of Senator Heflin. I remember the days of Congressman Bevel. I remember those days of those guys, the statesmen, uh, that you didn't have the fringes, you didn't have the hatred, you didn't have the division, and that's how I grew up. I've never run a negative ad in my life against an opponent. And not only that, when I got defeated as governor in 2010, anytime you run a 2 year race and you get defeated, it hits you right in the heart. But Governor Bentley called me and asked me to come and visit with him, and I did. And he asked me to take over the rural development office. And I said, give me a couple of days to think about it. And I did. And the reason I did is because I wanted to continue to work for the people of Alabama. And let me tell you one big success that we had. We brought telemedicine to the state of Alabama in 2011 by working across party lines and working with Governor Bentley and him supporting what we were trying to do. We were able to help. At that point in time, a lot of folks didn't want telemedicine. Insurance companies didn't want telemedicine. Doctors didn't want telemedicine. But it's been a game changer for the people of Alabama or rural Alabama. But I hate to see politicians pander for the only reason is to get reelected. Have courage, do the right things. And if you get defeated, you get defeated. But go down with a soul, go down with a heart, go down with who you really are if that's what you got to go. But don't say anything to get elected. Don't criticize people and put people down just to get elected. That is what people do just to get elected really sours my stomach sometimes. And you see a lot of it out there. You see a lot of it out there that the most important thing to them is not representing their constituents, but to get reelected. And I think that's, to me, that's nauseating. And I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to run my opponents down to try to better myself. I'm not going to run down the Republican legislature that we have now. I'm going to work with them. But you see it as much as I do. The hatred, the division, that if one thinks this, the other one thinks this. I think we need to get back to the middle. We need to learn how to compromise. We need to learn how to work with each other. And we need to stop this division and hatred that we see in our country and our state today.
I don't want to completely, sandbag your chances of winning by having you say something negative about my power in any way. But on the solar issue, our chicken farmers, I could put solar panels on the roof of my house and it might save me, I don't have, I mean, $50 a month, maybe. The chicken farmers, on the other hand, they've got hundreds of foot of roof line. They could put panels there and generate significant amounts of electricity, which would decrease their operating costs of those chicken houses. But in Alabama, we've got a deal where if you're in Alabama, in the part of the state regulated by the PSC, where you have to pay a charge to the power company for the capacity you would use when your solar panels are not working. And that's a significant cost for somebody like the chicken farmer guys. Does the I mean, Georgia doesn't have that fee, but we do have it here in Alabama. And, the same company owns both Alabama Power and Georgia Power. Is that something that needs to change? Of course, that's a PSC issue.
Well, it is a PSC issue, but I certainly think that my relationship with Alabama Power, when it comes to those kind of issues, I think that I would certainly have an opportunity to sit down and come up with some type of a compromise or a deal. I would say on these mega houses today that if you did put solar on a mega house, which is what, 500 feet now or so,
40
if
foot
you,
wide.
yeah, if you did put that on there, I would say they're going to produce more energy than what that chicken house could probably need. That's where Alabama Power probably needs that net energy in some way to come back to them because they look at, in my opinion, they look at every opportunity they can. Probably even some solar out there. I would say that they are some situations where Alabama Power are probably working with some solar companies now. But I don't know all of the issues now because it's been so long since I've been there. But I can assure you, I feel like that I have enough of a relationship with the leadership of Alabama Power that I could certainly get in the office and have that conversation to make sure that everybody benefits from any situation.
Like Commissioner Bishop was one of the most colorful politicians we've ever had. I remember was it Lowell Barron? He took a swing at that time.
Yeah,
Um, can,
I
can you
tried to
tell
tell
me
them
one of
that.
your can you tell me one of your favorite stories about Commissioner Bishop?
Oh yeah, I could tell you 1,000 stories about Commissioner Bishop. Let me tell you something. I have so much respect for Commissioner Bishop. He really taught me a lot. He's a smart man. He was a pilot, and a lot of times when we would get in his plane, he would only get up to about 2,000, 2,500 feet, and he would reach over and grab his pipe and start smoking that pipe, and I would be over there turning yellow because it would be nauseating. Not only would it be nauseating, it would be a little bit rough. I'm not the best flyer in the world, so normally when I would hit the ground, a lot of times I'd have to go to the bathroom and get rid of what I had for lunch. But and then on the way back, he would look at me and say, "I guess you want me to get up a little higher today, don't you?" So on the way back, he would get up there a little bit higher and say, "Boy, don't this feel good?" But he would also, you'd be in his office, and a lot of times he'd pull them glasses down like that and said, "Don't try to outthink me, boy." And but Commissioner Bishop was a great guy. He gave me a great opportunity. I worked with him a long time. I knew when he came in the Senate, he was an effective senator then, and uh, Commissioner Bishop, I have a lot of respect for him. If he told you a chicken dip snuff, you better be looking under the wing for the can because
I love that man.
I can tell you, when he told you the way it was going to be, that's the way it was going to be.
Um, Commissioner,
Yes,
when
sir.
you were in there, you tried to get the legislature and the industry to modernize Garrett, and the fairgrounds, out here in Montgomery. There was a little bit of that in the barns, but ultimately that didn't really happen. And so Alpha, got together in Jefferson County and they bought that Hallmark property up there north of Gardendale in Jefferson County. And my understanding is they're underway with building, our future agri complex. Um, how much, if we could get, the farm shows and those kind of things, kind of like they have in Georgia, in Tennessee, more going on here in Alabama, how much would that like revitalize some of our farm sector, especially the small farms? We've got kids, and they participate in things like horse shows and cow shows and lamb shows and whatnot.
Well, I've got to admit to you, and I hate to admit to you, that's probably one of the biggest failures I had the whole time that I was the ag commissioner. That would be an enormous for the state of Alabama. It would be unbelievable for Montgomery. Trying to get the politicians and the people around the surrounding area to understand how that could benefit the economy, what it would do for the economy, uh, was one of the biggest challenges that I ever had. I spent thousands of dollars having plans drawn up to show what Montgomery could be with a multi-purpose center, redoing the Coliseum, redoing the barns. Who's going to bring $100,000 horse and put them in a barn that they may get a nail cut down their side before they get out of there? I started rebuilding those barns at $100,000 each is what it cost me. I did it with Department of Agriculture labor. And finally, I got to a point that said, man, I'm not really getting to where I want to be. And that's where I shifted and tried to start getting people in the surrounding area to start thinking about what we could be if we had that. There would not be a number one to build a ag center to where you don't have hotels is pretty well ridiculous because a lot of people stay in hotels. A lot of people bring their own trailers. I started putting hookups, electrical hookups, and things for trailers at the Garrett Coliseum. The opportunity in Montgomery, Alabama, to redo that Coliseum, put a multi-purpose building in, to get all of those uh, uh, barns redone, would be, in my opinion, one of the most economical engines that Montgomery has seen, or the state of Alabama would see. It's the state capital. It's been there since 1952. They have enormous amount of parking, enormous amount of land. The opportunity there is untapped. And I can assure you, if I go back, that's going to be one of the first projects that I pick back up to try to see if I can't get enough people to start signing on to where we can do what needs to be done there. And that was a big disappointment in what I was trying to do when I was at the Department of Agriculture. Also, too, you're exactly right about these young people that show cattle, they show hogs, they show sheep, they show. I don't know if you know this or not, but I made sure that they never had to pay a fee. I paid their fees because what I saw out of these young people becoming young, productive, young citizens was pretty phenomenal. I never saw any of these kids that wasn't hard workers, that wasn't good learners, that just wasn't good people. And that's the kind of folks we need to grow in Alabama. And I supported the young folks as much as any commissioner in the history of this state because I knew what they could become. And rebuilding that Coliseum to where families could come in and have that family entertainment. Uh, you could have something at that Coliseum every week, whether it be a car show, knife show, ag show. Look at Moultrie, what they do in Moultrie, Georgia. I mean, what could happen at that Coliseum would be phenomenal if we could just get everybody to sign on and make it happen.
Commissioner, we've kept you almost 50 minutes. I think I've only got one more question for you, unless
That,
Brandon
that,
Brandon may have something else. But I wish I
Yeah,
was
I
telling
can
my buddy
ask
this the other
questions all
day.
day, but we have to stop at something.
no,
Well,
good.
okay. Well, if you had to get another, or if you had another one, ask him this, and then we'll let him make a final statement. I was telling my buddy the other day that I wish I'd been like as smart as you when I was young, instead of joining the Army and joining the Coast Guard. How fun of a job was that?
It was phenomenal. I learned a lot. It made a young man out of me pretty quick. I probably got two new knees from it, but other than that, I learned a lot. As you know, going through boot camp, uh, going on and doing the things that I was able to do helped me throughout my life. And my draft number was 62 uh, uh,
Wow.
back in 1971. And I always wanted to do things different. And when I went in the Coast Guard, I became a member of the United States Coast Guard Honor Guard. I always wanted to do things different, and I was very fortunate to be able to spend 4 years in the Coast Guard. I'm proud of being a veteran. I'm, you know, I've always been proud of that, and I'm proud of anybody that serves their country in that way.
Brandon, do you have any other questions?
No, yeah. Well, I mean, I can
Would you
keep
like to make
asking questions, but
a
we've done 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Would you like to make a final statement here, Commissioner?
Well, first of all, let me just say thank y'all. I really do appreciate the questions that you've asked me today. It's pretty obvious you're very knowledgeable when it comes to the issues at the Department of Agriculture. You're right on target. Uh, I feel real good about my race. I ask people to really look at my administration when I was there. Let's don't get into the DNR situation. Let's look at who is the most qualified, who can go into that office on day one and make things start happening. And I'm going to do everything that I can to tell the people the truth and shoot people straight and work as hard as I can to try to be successful in this race. And if I am, I'm going to give the people of Alabama 4 more hard years. And I appreciate the opportunity coming on your show. And if you need me again somewhere down the road, you know how to get in touch with me.
Thank you
Thanks a
so
lot,
much for
Commissioner.
being
I'll get this
on.
loaded up to YouTube this afternoon, and when I load it up there, I'll tag you on Facebook in it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you,
y'all.
Commissioner.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Stop recording. Okay, that was a good one too, Brandon.
Yeah,